Mangroves are climate superheroes. They can absorb 4 times to 10 times more carbon dioxide than trees on land. But we've managed to eliminate half of these superheroes in a single lifetime. That's right, half of the mangroves on our planet have disappeared. So what are we going to do about this? Well, thankfully, there are many communities around the world who are actively planting mangrove seeds to bring back our superheroes. In fact, scientists have identified 10,000 kilometers of land across the planet that is perfect, really just perfect, for mangrove restoration. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how to picture 10,000 square kilometers. But I think each of us know what a football field looks like, right? Well, get this, 10,000 square kilometers is equivalent to 500 million full-sized football field. That's right, 500 million, which means we have to seed the equivalent of 500 million football fields. Now that's going to take just a bit of time, right? And we don't have that time. So what are we going to do? Because we know that hand seeding is a slow, a time-consuming, tedious, manual, and expensive process. And what's more is that some of these lands that need to be restored are in very hard to access area where you can't actually access them by foot. So what are we going to do about this? Well, the startup Inverto is exploring how we might be able to seed mangroves by using flying robots or drones. And this is from their project in Pakistan. You see the ranger here has a bucket full of mangrove seeds, and it's dumping those seeds into the drone, which will then take off, automatically fly by itself and drop so many mangroves across large areas. And what Inverto has shown by this project in Pakistan is if we combine human seeding with drone seeding, we can actually seed mangroves 200 times faster. And as you all know much better than I do, there are many areas here in Kenya that are in need of mangrove restoration. So I'm excited to be teaming up with my excellent friends at Kenya Flying Labs and the Kenyan Robotics Association and Inverto to explore the application of this technology right here along the coast in Kenya. Now, meanwhile, back the edge of space, we've recently discovered that there's a strong connection between the stratosphere and extreme weather events. This means that changes in our stratosphere can cause and influence major extreme events down on the planet. So we need to better understand this connection between the stratosphere and these extreme events. And for that, we need more stratospheric data. This is essential to improving both our weather and climate prediction models. How are we going to do this? It's particularly challenging. Well, this is where weather balloons come in. Did you know that across the globe, over 600,000 weather balloons are released into the air? And these balloons carry these sensor packages to collect all this data as the balloon gets further and further up in the stratosphere. But here's the thing, these balloons are all in a one-way flight. The vast majority of the sensors that they carry, they're never recovered. Now, why is that? Well, here's how it works. At some point, at some altitude, the balloon will basically release the sensor package, which will have its own parachute, and it will land somewhere on the planet. But 75% of these balloons and sensors and so on are never recovered. Why? Well, because it's too expensive, it's too slow, it takes too much hassle. And so what we're effectively doing, what we are literally doing, is we are trashing the planet with metals, with electronics, with batteries, with parachutes, right? All in the name of climate science. Now, surely we can do this better. And that is precisely where robot weather stations come in. The startup R2Home is building and testing robotic stratosphere paragliders. So the concept is very similar. The balloon still goes up, but when the sensor is dropped, instead of a parachute, you have this orange paraglider that opens up. And this paraglider then will automatically bring back the sensors to the launch sites. We can use and reuse one robot and send that one robot 100 times into the stratosphere to collect the same amount of data. And by using this approach, we can actually reduce the cost of data collection in the stratosphere by 84%, which means we can send so many more robots into the stratosphere to capture so much more data, which is extremely important to improve our climate and prediction models and our weather forecast models. Because for now, in the current situation, without this data, our long-range forecasts are frankly incomplete and unreliable. And, oh, by the way, here's a bonus. We can use these robots without actually trashing the planet at the same time. Let's talk about clean energy. Let's talk about wind energy. In order to meet the global climate goals by 2050, we need to manufacture and deploy billions of these massive structures, these massive wind turbines. Otherwise, we're going to fall short of these climate goals. Now, there are a number of challenges still with these wind turbines. In the first place, there's still strong public resistance to wind turbines, and a very common complaint is that they basically ruin the scenery, they ruin the view. And that pushback is pretty strong. There are many other challenges. For example, some of the most windy areas on our planet are very remote. And so if we set up the wind turbines there, we have to find a way to transmit that energy over long distances to connect that electricity to urban areas, to urban centers. And there are many logistical challenges in actually manufacturing and deploying these massive structures. So what are we going to do about that? Well, let's talk about flying wind turbines. Why have wind turbines grounded when they can fly up in the air where there's more wind, right? Now, this idea comes to us from a startup called Kitecraft, and they're building and testing this drone in order to generate clean energy from the wind. And this is how it works. The drone itself has 8 propellers, which it uses to lift the drone up into the sky. And when the drone hits some of those wind currents, you don't need the propellers anymore, because what happens is that the drone starts to glide like a kite. And so what do we do with these propellers? We don't need them anymore. Well, we use them as wind turbines. The wind is there, the propellers are up there, and they're turning because of the wind, which generates this wind energy. And thank you to this very helpful electrical tether that's connecting the drone to the ground station, that electricity that's generated up there is transmitted down to the ground station. You know, ta-da, clean energy provided by Mother Earth with a drone. Now, I think there's a lot to be excited about with respect to this particular solution. Chances are, compared to traditional wind turbines, these flying turbines are much easier and faster to deploy, right? And their environmental footprint is significantly less than their much bigger cousins that are fixed on land. What's more, they don't create the noise pollution and the visual impact that their bigger cousins do, because they're right up in the air. You don't hear them, and you hardly see them either. So that means we can actually have these flying wind turbines operating right near urban centers. We don't need to transmit that energy for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. We can do it on site. And so Kitecraft believes that with this approach, they can actually cut down the cost of wind energy by a half, which would really open up so many more opportunities for decarbonizing our planet. Okay, let's stick to clean energy. The most abundant resource of energy on this planet is solar energy. And did you know that there is enough solar energy hitting Earth for 1.5 hours of sunlight to actually meet all of humanity's energy needs for a full year? So solar energy is an incredible gift, and that's why the race is on to basically make these solar panels even more efficient and to scale solar farms around the world. Like this particular solar farm in India, which is absolutely massive. This solar farm is comprised of some 10 million panels. 10 million, right? Now, there is a bit of a catch, if you'd like, because these panels, like a lot of other things we put outdoors, they tend to get dirty over time. And recent research has shown that when these panels get dirty, their efficiency, their energy efficiency is reduced by as much as 50%. So just when you thought you had 10 million solar panels generating electricity, you have half of that, right? So what are we going to do about this? We need to keep these solar panels clean to get as much energy, much solar energy from the sun. Well, we have to clean it. And a lot of the cleaning is done by hand, right? And we know that that's slow, it's tedious, it takes time, and it uses a copious amounts of water. In areas where solar panels are set up, they're desert, semi-arid areas. And here we're using so much water to clean these solar panels, right? So what are we going to do about this? Well, this is where Soltrix comes in. This is a relatively new startup, and they are building ground robots to autonomously, automatically clean these solar panels, right? And get this, the robot does not use a single drop of water in order to clean these solar panels. So I'd call that a win. Okay, all this talk about solar energy, the sun, is making me a little hot. Let's cool down, right? Let's go and dive down into the ocean, where corals are truly the jewels of the ocean. Did you know that 25% of marine life around the world is dependent on corals, and 1 billion of us, 1 billion people, are dependent on corals for their own livelihoods? And maybe one of my absolute favorite facts about corals is that once a year, and really only once a year, on one magical night, when the temperature of the waters are just right and the moon, the full moon, is shining, these corals release millions and millions of baby corals. It's just a majestical sight to behold. And it doesn't matter that a very, very, very small percentage of these baby corals actually go on to survive and become full corals. That doesn't matter that it's such a small fraction, because Mother Nature is already optimized for this, right? And this is the circle of life. Now, for millions of years, this didn't matter. But today, this very, very, very low survival rate, it really matters, because corals are getting hit very hard by the climate crisis. Scientists have projected that 99% of corals worldwide will die if we don't take action right now. So what are we going to do about this? Well, thank heavens for marine scientists, because marine scientists have basically figured out how to create nurseries, or if you like, kindergartens for baby corals. And that keeps these baby corals much safer, right? That really significantly increases the survival rate of corals. And recent research has shown that when these baby corals are moved from kindergarten back into the big blue ocean, some 80% of these baby corals actually survive and go on to building new coral communities. And that's amazing. Of course, you're probably waiting for the catch, and there is a bit of a catch. Releasing these baby corals is very, very time consuming. It's a very manual process and it requires a lot of equipment. But this is where QUT comes in, the Queensland University of Technology. They've basically built this underwater robot to autonomously reseed coral reefs in areas that have been the most devastated, to bring new life to these corals. And what the team has shown is when you combine human divers with this robot, we can actually reseed corals 21 times faster than if we just send the human divers alone. And this is why this platform is not only being deployed in Australia, but also in Vietnam, the Philippines, and the Maldives. So when I talk about climate robotics, this is what I mean. And I literally have 100 other examples to share of climate robotics in action. For example, one area that I've not talked about at all is the application of robotics for waste management and recycling, just like our favorite little robot here, WALL-E from the Disney movie. In fact, WALL-E is an excellent, perfect example of the full value add that robotics can bring to climate action. You see, WALL-E can both assess and assist, right? Robots use sensors and AI to collect and analyze data about its environment, right? To make sense of it. And WALL-E does this in order to say, oh, these metals go there, this is not recyclable, and so on, right? But wait, that's not all that robots can do. Robots can also interact with our world, can act on our world, can even change our world. And that's exactly what WALL-E also does. When it finds the same types of metals across a huge heap of trash, it combines them and it physically compresses them into these cubes, these boxes, which then it puts in the right places for recycling purposes. And so robots can do a lot more than data collection alone. WALL-E here is an excellent example because it clearly shows that robots can both assess and assist climate. Now, obviously by now you know that climate robots are certainly not science fiction. There are many, many startups and companies, for example, getting into the waste management and recycling space. Now, why am I personally passionate, dedicated, interested in climate technology? Well, the answer to that question has a lot to do with the fact that I was born on the West Coast and that I grew up on the East Coast of Africa. A lot of my values come from having grown up in Africa. My passion for innovation, thinking outside the box, for technology, and for social justice is really all thanks to having been born and raised in Africa. In fact, I was raised right here in Kenya, and I really still remember the very, very first time when I first saw the Indian Ocean, which was literally just around the corner, right here in Mombasa. And I mean, I was 7. I had never seen anything like this in my life before. And the marine life across the coast in Mombasa was everywhere, right? Now, this was the 1980s, and like I said, I was 7 years old, and so I couldn't really swim that very far, right? But at the time, you didn't need to swim very far to see all the marine life that Mombasa had to offer. It was all right there. It was just right there. The negative side, a lot of that marine life that used to be just right there along the coast of Mombasa has had to retreat further away, deeper away to more safe waters. And so my son and many children in Kenya who are growing up now and around the world will never know that it hasn't always been this way. But it hasn't. It really, really hasn't. The climate crisis is very, very real. And it's also true that our ability to act now is also very, very real. We can do something about this. And so many cities around the world, like the city of Mombasa, is actively developing concrete climate action plans to do something about this climate crisis. And the good news is that many of the solutions that we need in order to tackle the climate crisis, they already exist. Project Drawdown has clearly proven this. The solutions, many of them already exist. So the real priority right now is to actually deploy these solutions, to be able to scale them as quickly as possible. So that's exactly what we all need to do now, is deploy, deploy, deploy. Now, there's a catch. The fact of the matter is, many of our deployments are still very manual deployments. And as we all know, manual deployments simply do not scale. They take too much time. They're too labor intensive, too manual. And this is where robotics can play an important role in climate action. It can help speed all of that up. You can think of climate robotics as a multiplier for existing climate solutions. When we combine human ingenuity and agency with robotics, we can really move the needle. At the same time, it's really important that we do not fall prey to technocentric thinking and fall in love with technology and become obsessed with, techno-solutionism, right? Because that, I guarantee you, is an absolute recipe for disaster. We may not see this clearly now, but I promise you that climate tech will not save us. Climate technology is not going to bring about a utopia. Fact of the matter is, the climate technology space is very much still foreign-led, top-down, and technocentric. And 99% of our conversations about climate tech focus exclusively on what technology to use and how to optimize its use. Barely 1% of us talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity in the context of climate technology research, development, and deployment. And even fewer still talk about intersectionality, as well as power asymmetries and the need to democratize access to climate technology. And I can tell you, we've been here before in the humanitarian technology space for the past 20 years. We know how this movie ends, and we don't want it to end the same way, because we know full well that foreign-led, top-down, and technocentric approaches are unsustainable, they're ineffective, and they're known to cause harm. Why? Well, because this approach basically excludes local knowledge, local expertise, leadership, you name it. And without that, we run into many, many challenges. So we've got to do better. And yes, deploy, deploy, deploy. By all means, deploy. But who matters? The who that deploys these technology matters more than the actual technology being deployed. Now, there are many other challenges in the climate technology space. Could spend all day on all of these. For example, this is a new space, right? So the evidence base for the value added of this technology is very thin. It's very limited. There's still a lot of learning that we need to do. It's also true that we don't yet know the full range of risks that come with deploying these kinds of technologies at scale. The unintended, unexpected consequences of this. There's also a need to enable a maker-faire DIY community around climate robotics to really make that space and the technology a lot more accessible. And it's precisely because of all these challenges that I founded the Climate Robotics Network. The network brings together climate experts and roboticists and many more communities to help overcome some of these challenges and tackle and manage these risks in order to scale climate robotics in a way that's both responsible and inclusive. And these colleagues of mine down here, they're all part of the advisors team or part of the research team, and you're all invited to join the team. We need as much help as we can get. There's so much to do in this space, and we need to start acting now. To give you a flavor of what's coming up, we're actively involved in organizing an online climate robotics summit. We're also creating a global map of the climate robotics space. We're mapping who is doing what, where, how, and why to help connect that community. And we're doing so much more. And we really welcome you to be part of this solution. So definitely get in touch. To conclude, it's very easy to talk doom and gloom in the climate space. But we don't believe in doom and gloom at the Climate Robotics Network. What we believe in is that we can do and bloom our way into a new and better world. So again, all of you are part of the solution. Why? Because technology alone will not save us. We need all hands on deck. Thank you very much.